well, I'm going to wait until April. Well, don't wait until April. I mean, if you have to wait until April, fine. Okay. But if you don't have to, don't.
Hello and welcome back to Change and the Market, your weekly look at the changing real estate market. I'm your host, Brian, and I'm joined, as always, by our resident real estate expert, Chris Masiello. Chris, how you doing this morning?
Brian, good to be with you. Good to be with everybody else in our community.
Fantastic. Let's get right into it like we always do, Chris. How have things changed in the housing market in the last 7 days?
Well, yeah, it's been interesting. I'm going to reference two articles, one written by Goldman Sachs and the other one written by Yahoo Finance, which we shared internally with all of our agents and staff. But both articles did a really good job about talking about how the housing market has bottomed. And I'll talk about what that correction kind of looks like and why we have it. But and those are two really reliable sources. So I feel it's accurate, anecdotally from what we see in the marketplace as well. So those are really well placed and well timed articles. So just to put some color around the market, so the run up in the market, we had a 20% a year appreciation rate for 2 years in a row, right? So there really aren't a lot of products or services that can have a 40% increase in 2 years ostensibly, and not have some slowdown in the product purchase or product usage. And the simple reason being is that you need to take time to let people's ability for purchasing power to catch up. And so I think that's kind of where the housing market, if you think about it, it took about a 1 year hiatus, right? So nationally sales were, I'll just use round numbers, nationally sales were in 2021, about 6 million residential units nationally. It'd be about 4 million in 2022. So, that was just enough time to let people's balance sheets and personal finances and give the market a chance to slow down. We still had appreciation in 2022. It's not like we didn't have appreciation. Depending on where you were, is in a 3 to 7% range nationally. So the market's still very healthy, and it just needed to take that 1 year pause. Interest rates were kind of the catalyst to that. But now rates are starting to go down. So the market's been really, if you think about the housing market, it's a lot like the labor market. And the housing market and the labor market share really two things in common, which is, both, the labor market and housing not having enough supply, labor for workers and housing for inventory. So, the market's been very resilient, regardless of even doubling of interest rates. Really for two reasons. First is demographics, and demographics equals really demand. So the demographic we're dealing with is that we've got 55 million baby boomers and 62 million millennials. And then you've got some, of course, Gen X and Gen Y buyers in there as well. But predominantly you have those two large demographic groups that between the baby boomers and the millennials that are all in the housing market. We've never had that before. And so that's what creates the demand. So this market, even with the doubling of interest rates, is still basically demographically driven. And then the second piece to it is inventory. And of course, inventory equals supply. And inventories are all-time lows because home building is operating at a 50% level for the last 15 years. So we're not, we're adding more buyers, but we're not adding more supply into the housing stock. And so, those are the two factors that are really driving it. And that's why the market's so resilient, because none of that has changed. So interest rates can go up and all this other stuff. Those are factors. But the underlying factors have not changed. You have more people entering the market with diverse housing needs, right? Millennials and later baby boomers have in some ways similar needs. And so they're competing basically for the same housing stock. And then you've got, really a pretty drastic reduction in the increase of housing availability in the last 15 years. So that's why the market's so resilient.
Kind of bouncing off of that, getting into our second question, then what kind of advice do you have for agents, for home buyers, for sellers right now, considering the state of the market?
So markets are notoriously hard to predict when they're gonna bottom out and when they're gonna peak. But it's notorious. I would say though that within a margin of error, that we can say that this is pretty much bottomed, more or less. And so if you're a seller, you should be putting your house on the market now. You don't have a lot of competition. And if you're a buyer, it's kind of the same thing. You should be in the market because, a lot of people are waiting to spring. I hear this anecdotally all the time. I was on a company-wide call yesterday, and you were hearing this anecdotally that people, I'm going to wait until April. Well, don't wait until April. I mean, if you have to wait until April, fine. Okay. But if you don't have to, don't. Because you don't have a lot of competition. And if you're a seller, if you're a buyer, it's the same thing, So that would be my advice there, because you've pretty much hit the bottom. And then I think the other piece, if you're an agent, that really now, what you do in the first half of this year is going to completely determine the outcome of the entire year. So your first half of the year is really going to predict what happens in the second half of the year. So if you're not intentful about what you're doing and really working with purpose about educating your buyers, educating your sellers, all those types of things, helping people get their houses on the market in a more timely way, preparing buyers for entering the market. I mean, this is what we want to be doing now. And if we do that, then we'll have a good second part of the year.
Fantastic. And then finally, as always, we're going to get into our general advice. You had a very interesting analogy that I can't wait to hear you expand upon. So go ahead and hit us with that, Chris.
Well, we had two, right? We had one that was biblical. We'll do that at the end. And then the other one was surfing, which, I kind of like. So, in surfing, you always, you don't catch the wave when it crests, right? You catch the wave when it's forming. Mm. And because by the time you catch the wave when it crested, it's over. And I think that's where we are now. Like if you're going to wait, for it to be an absolute, like you absolutely can see the wave, well, at some level, you're going to be behind the curve.
Yeah, you're too late.
And so, you're too late. It's the same thing when you're on your board and you see a wave coming, you want to paddle ahead of it, right? You don't want to be paddling behind it to try to catch the crest. And then the last one was, we were joking about, we could never remember where I heard this. It came from a movie and I could never remember.
I still can't figure it out. I still don't know.
It'll come to me when we're done, but it's like, well, when did Noah build the ark? Well, he built it before the rain. He didn't build it
before the flood. Yeah,
before the flood, right? So, so just, two analogies I think, we can use for this week to kind of spur us on to take advantage of the conditions we have.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Excellent advice. As always, that's going to do it for this week's Change in the Market. If you've been enjoying the show, make sure you're following, subscribing, liking us on whatever platform you're watching or listening to us. And make sure to join us back here next week for another brand new episode of Change and the Market.
Thanks, Brian. See you, folks.